The morning that changed everything, Rebecca Thompson pushed through the glass doors of Mercy General Hospital. Her scrubs wrinkled and her sneakers scuffed from another endless overnight shift. The Los Angeles sunrise painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, but she barely noticed. 12 hours on her feet in the emergency room had left her muscles aching and her mind foggy. All she wanted was her bed, a hot shower, and maybe some breakfast, if she could stay awake long enough to eat. She pulled her worn jacket tighter against the cool morning air and started walking toward the bus stop. Her car had broken down 3 weeks ago, and the repair costs were more than she could afford on a nurse's salary. Public transportation had become her reality. Just another reminder of how different her life was from the glossy pictures she sometimes scrolled past on social media. Rebecca passed the coffee shop where she usually stopped, but her wallet was too light this week. Bills had piled up, her student loans never seemed to shrink, and her mother back in Ohio needed help with her medications. Being a nurse meant helping people, but it also meant barely scraping by yourself. A child in danger the street was quiet this early. With only a few cars cruising past and the occasional jogger on the sidewalk, Rebecca was lost in thought, mentally calculating if she could pick up an extra shift this weekend. When a sound cut through her exhaustion, a child's scream. High and terrified, her training kicked in instantly. Rebecca's head snapped up, her exhaustion forgotten as adrenaline flooded her system. Across the street, near the construction site that had been there for months, a small boy stumbled onto the road. He was maybe 6 years old, wearing expensive-looking clothes that seemed out of place in this neighborhood. His face was red and streaked with tears. Rebecca saw what he did not. A massive delivery truck was barreling down the street. The driver's attention focused on his GPS instead of the road ahead. The truck was not slowing down. The driver had not seen the child. Time seemed to slow. Rebecca's body moved before her mind fully processed what was happening. Her legs pumped hard against the pavement. Her breath came in sharp gasps. The distance between her and the child felt like miles, though it was only yards. 20 feet, 15, 10. The truck driver finally looked up, his eyes widening in horror. Brakes squealed, but physics and momentum were cruel masters. The truck would not stop in time. Rebecca reached the boy with seconds to spare. She grabbed him around his small waist and threw both of them sideways, away from the road. They hit the ground hard on the sidewalk, Rebecca twisting at the last second to take the impact on her shoulder and hip. Pain exploded through her body as they rolled across the concrete. The truck roared past, so close that the wind from it whipped Rebecca's hair across her face. It finally shuddered to a stop 30 feet down the street. The moment of truth, Rebecca lay on the cold sidewalk. The child clutched against her chest. Her shoulders screamed in protest, and she could feel blood trickling down her arm where the concrete had torn her skin. But the boy was breathing. He was crying, scared out of his mind, but he was alive. She forced herself to sit up, keeping the child close. Her hands moved automatically, checking him for injuries with the practiced efficiency of her years in emergency care. No broken bones. No bleeding. Just fear and shock. The boy looked up at her with enormous brown eyes brimming with tears. He was shaking, his small hands gripping her scrubs so tightly his knuckles were white. "It's okay," Rebecca whispered, her own voice trembling. "You're safe now. I've got you." Footsteps pounded toward them, fast and desperate. Rebecca looked up to see a man running from a sleek black car that had screeched to a stop nearby. He was tall, probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and a face that would have been handsome if it were not currently twisted with raw terror. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Rebecca's monthly rent. The man dropped to his knees beside them, his hands reaching for the child with visible desperation. "Oliver, God, Oliver, are you hurt?" The boy turned and launched himself at the man. Daddy, I was so scared." The man caught his son and held him like he might disappear, his eyes squeezed shut. Rebecca could see his chest heaving, could hear the ragged edge to his breathing. This was not just fear. This was the terror of someone who had already lost too much and came within seconds of losing everything, a world apart for a long moment. Nobody spoke. The truck driver had gotten out of his vehicle and stood nearby, pale and shaking, pulling out his phone to call for help. Morning traffic was starting to build, cars slowing as they passed the scene. But Rebecca only watched the man holding his son. Finally, the man opened his eyes and looked at her. Really looked at her. His gaze swept over her torn scrubs, the blood on her arm, the dirt covering her from their impact with the ground. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You saved him. You saved my son." Rebecca tried to stand, but her injured shoulder buckled. The man immediately shifted his son to one arm and reached out to steady her with the other. His grip was strong and warm. "I'm fine," Rebecca insisted, though she clearly was not. "Just bruised. Is he okay?" "I checked him over, but we should probably get him looked at by a doctor to be safe." "I'm taking you both to a hospital right now." It was not a request. The man's tone had shifted into something commanding, someone used to being obeyed. "Please, let me help you." "It's the least I can do." Rebecca wanted to argue, wanted to just go home and collapse in her own bed, but the pain in her shoulder was getting worse. She nodded. The man kept one hand on her elbow as he guided her toward his car. Oliver clung to his father's neck but kept looking back at Rebecca, his tear-stained face showing something between awe and fear as they reached the vehicle. A driver appeared from nowhere to open the doors. Rebecca realized this was not just an expensive car. This was the kind of car that came with staff. The interior was leather and chrome, smelling of money and privilege. "Where are we going?" Rebecca asked as the man helped her into the back seat and then climbed in beside her with Oliver still in his arms. "West Side Private Medical Center," he said. Then he seemed to realize something. "I'm Julian Hayes. This is my son Oliver." Julian Hayes. The name meant nothing to Rebecca at first, and then memory clicked into place. Julian Hayes, founder and CEO of Hayes Tech Industries. One of the youngest billionaires in America, his face had been on the cover of business magazines, tech blogs, and even a few celebrity gossip sites after his wife had died in a car accident. Rebecca stared at him, suddenly very aware of how she must look. Dirty scrubs, messy hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, no makeup, probably smelling like the hospital and sweat. She was sitting in a car with a billionaire. "I'm Rebecca Thompson," she finally managed. "I'm a nurse at Mercy General." Julian's expression softened slightly. "A nurse? Of course you are. That explains the way you moved. Like you had training?" He looked down at Oliver, who had finally stopped crying and was now just hiccuping softly against his father's chest. "You didn't hesitate. Most people would have frozen, but you just ran." "I couldn't let him get hurt." The words came out simply, honestly. Rebecca had never been good at accepting praise. She had just done what needed to be done. The weight of gratitude, the drive to the private clinic took only minutes. Rebecca spent them acutely aware of Julian's presence beside her, of the way he kept one protective arm around his son, while his other hand rested near hers on the seat. Oliver had finally relaxed enough to loosen his grip on his father's shirt.
Dad.
And his curious brown eyes kept darting to Rebecca. "What's your name?" The boy whispered. "Yeah, but you can call me Becca if you want." "Thank you for saving me, Miss Becca." His voice was so small, so sincere, that Rebecca felt her throat tighten. "You're very welcome." "Sweetheart, the clinic was everything Mercy General was not. Clean white walls, modern art, soft music playing in the background, and staff who appeared instantly when Julian walked through the doors. A doctor materialized to examine Oliver first. While a nurse led Rebecca to a private room, her injuries turned out to be minor. Deep bruising, some road rash that needed cleaning and bandaging, but nothing broken. She would be sore for a few days, but she had worked through worse. The nurse was gentle and efficient, making small talk that Rebecca barely heard. Her mind kept drifting back to the little boy and his father. When the nurse finished, Julian appeared in the doorway. He had taken off his suit jacket, and his tie was loosened. He looked tired, older than he probably was, carrying the weight of something heavy. "Oliver's fine," he said, before Rebecca could ask. "Not a scratch on him. The doctor said he might have bad dreams for a while, but physically he is perfect. Thanks to you, I'm glad." Rebecca stood up, testing her shoulder. "It hurt, but it was manageable. I should get home." I have another shift tonight. Wait, Julian stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Please, I need to talk to you. I need you to understand what you did today. Rebecca waited, unsure what else to say. Julian ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that made him look younger, more vulnerable. 2 years ago, my wife died in a car accident. Oliver was in the car with her. He survived without a scratch, but she didn't make it. Ever since then, he has been terrified of cars, of traffic, of crossing streets. This morning, he saw a dog run away from our building, and he just took off after it without thinking. I turned my back for 5 seconds to grab my briefcase from the car, and he was gone. Rebecca's heart clenched. She understood now the depth of Julian's terror when he saw his son in danger. He had already lived through one nightmare. He had almost lived through another. If you had not been there, Julian continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, I would have lost him. The only thing I have left that matters. Do you understand? You did not just save a child today, Rebecca. You saved my entire world. The intensity in his eyes made Rebecca's breath catch. This was not just gratitude. This was something deeper, something that spoke of pain and loss and desperate relief. Anyone would have done the same thing, Rebecca said, though she knew it was not true. Most people would have frozen. Most people would have screamed or called for help. She had run into danger without thinking. No, Julian said firmly, not anyone.
You did.
And I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to repay that debt. You don't owe me anything. Julian smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. You saved what I love most in this world. Trust me when I say, I owe you everything. When worlds collide, 3 days passed before Rebecca heard from Julian Hayes again. 3 days of double shifts at Mercy General, of falling into bed exhausted, only to dream of a little boy running into traffic, of waking up with her shoulder aching and purple bruises blooming across her skin. She told herself to forget about the whole incident. Rich people had their own lives, their own problems. She had done a good thing, and that was enough. But on Thursday evening, when Rebecca finally dragged herself home after a particularly brutal shift, she found someone waiting outside her apartment building. Julian Hayes stood beside his black car, looking completely out of place in this neighborhood with its cracked sidewalks and faded paint. He wore jeans and a casual shirt this time, but somehow still managed to look like he belonged in a different world. Rebecca stopped at the bottom of the stairs, her heart doing an unexpected flip. Mr. Hayes, what are you doing here? Julian, please. He pushed off from the car and walked toward her. I came to check on you, to see how you're healing. His eyes swept over her, taking in the way she favored her left side, the exhaustion written in every line of her body, and to talk to you about something important. Rebecca shifted her weight, suddenly aware of how she must look. Her scrubs were wrinkled and stained from the shift. Her hair was falling out of its ponytail, and she probably smelled like antiseptic and sweat. I'm fine. Really? You didn't need to come all this way? Can we talk inside? Please. Every instinct told Rebecca this was a bad idea, but something in Julian's expression made her nod. She led him up the 3 flights of stairs to her tiny apartment, acutely aware of the peeling wallpaper and the flickering hallway light. When she unlocked her door, she almost apologized for the cramped space, the secondhand furniture, the way everything she owned could probably fit in one corner of his house. Julian stepped inside and looked around, but his expression held no judgment. If anything, he seemed almost wistful. This feels like a home. My house is 10 times bigger, but it never feels lived in. Rebecca set down her bag and gestured to the small couch. Can I get you something? Water? Coffee? That's pretty much all I have. I'm fine, thank you. Julian sat down, but he seemed restless, his fingers drumming against his knee. Rebecca, I'm going to be direct because I don't know any other way to do this. I want to offer you a job. The proposal. Rebecca lowered herself into the chair across from him, confusion furrowing her brow. A job? Doing what? I'm a nurse, Mr. Hayes. Julian, I don't know anything about technology or business. I don't need a tech expert. I need someone for Oliver. Julian leaned forward, his intense gaze fixed on her. Since the accident that killed my wife, Oliver has been struggling. He has nightmares. He won't let me out of his sight for more than a few minutes. He refuses to talk about his mother or his feelings. I've hired the best therapists, the most qualified nannies, but nothing has worked. He's withdrawn into himself, and I'm watching my son disappear a little more each day." Rebecca's heart ached at the pain in Julian's voice. "I'm sorry. That must be incredibly hard. But then you saved him." Julian's voice grew stronger, and for the first time in 2 years I saw something different in Oliver. "He talked about you constantly the past 3 days. Miss Becca was so brave. Miss Becca wasn't scared. Miss Becca saved me. He asked me this morning if he could see you again. That's sweet, but I don't see how that translates into a job. One should be Oliver's personal caregiver. Not a nanny, not a therapist, just someone who can be there for him. Someone he already trusts. Someone who showed him what courage looks like." Julian pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and set it on the coffee table between them. "This is a contract. The salary is 5 times what you make at the hospital, plus benefits, plus accommodation if you want it. 1-year commitment, with the possibility of extension." Rebecca stared at the envelope like it might bite her. 5 times? That's impossible. It's fair compensation for what I'm asking. You would essentially be on call whenever Oliver needs you, which means leaving your current job. I'm asking you to change your entire life. That deserves proper payment. But I'm not a child psychologist. I'm not a professional caregiver. I work in an emergency room. I patch up wounds and start IVs and keep people alive in crisis situations. And you ran into traffic to save a child without hesitation." Julian's voice was quiet but firm. "That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Oliver doesn't need another credential or another expert. He needs someone real. Someone who doesn't treat him like a broken thing that needs fixing. Someone like you, the weight of decision." Becca stood and walked to her small kitchen window, looking out at the street below. A part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity of this. A billionaire was sitting in her apartment, offering her a life-changing amount of money to spend time with his son. It sounded like the plot of a movie, not something that happened to ordinary people like her, but another part of her. The part that had been struggling with bills and exhaustion and the feeling that she was running in place, while life passed her by, whispered that maybe this was the opportunity she had been waiting for. "Why me?" she asked, not turning around. "You could hire anyone. Someone with better credentials, more experience with children. Someone from your world who understands how to navigate it. Because Oliver chose you." Julian's reflection appeared in the window glass as he moved to stand behind her. Not too close, respecting her space, but near enough that she could feel his presence. Children have instincts about people. They know who is genuine and who is pretending. And my son looked at you like you were a hero. I haven't seen him look at anyone that way since his mother died. Rebecca turned to face him. They were standing closer than she had realized, and she had to tilt her head back slightly to meet his eyes. Up close, she could see the fine lines of stress around them, the shadow of grief that never quite left. "I need to think about it," she said. "This is a huge decision. I have patients who depend on me at the hospital. I have a life here, even if it's not glamorous. I understand." Julian reached into his pocket again and pulled out a business card. "My personal number is on here. Call me when you've decided. But Rebecca, please don't take too long. Oliver asks about you every day, and I don't know how much longer I can keep telling him that maybe we'll see Miss Becca again soon." The thought of disappointing that little boy made Rebecca's chest tighten. She took the card, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The contact was electric, unexpected, and from the way Julian's eyes widened slightly, he felt it too. He left a few minutes later, and Rebecca was alone with the envelope and the business card and a decision that felt impossibly heavy. Memories and choices that night, Rebecca could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, turning Julian's offer over and over in her mind. The money was incredible, life-changing. She could pay off her student loans, help her mother with medical bills, maybe even save enough to feel secure for the first time in her adult life. But it was not about the money, not really. It was about Oliver's face when he had whispered, "Thank you," about the way Julian's voice had cracked when he talked about losing his son. It was about the pull she felt toward this family, this broken little unit that needed help. Rebecca thought about her own childhood. Growing up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat, She remembered being Oliver's age and feeling scared all the time. Scared that her mom would not come home. Scared that they would lose their apartment. Scared that the world was a dangerous place where bad things happened and nobody could stop them. She remembered the neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had stepped in to help. An older woman who had no obligation to care about a struggling single mother and her daughter, but who did anyway. Mrs. Patterson had made Rebecca feel safe. She had been there after school with snacks and homework help and a steady presence that said everything would be okay. Maybe Rebecca could be that person for Oliver. Maybe that was worth more than any paycheck. By morning, Rebecca had made her decision. She called Julianne at 8 before she could second-guess herself. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. "Rebecca?" "I'll do it," she said. "I'll take the job. But I have conditions." "Name them." "I want to do a trial period first. 1 month. If Oliver and I don't connect the way you hope, or if I'm not helping him, then we end it with no hard feelings. And I want to be clear that I'm there for Oliver, not as household staff. I won't cook or clean or do anything except focus on his well-being." "Agreed." "Absolutely agreed. Anything else?" "I need 2 weeks to give proper notice at the hospital and to wrap up my cases. I won't leave my patients in the lurch, of course." "That's more than fair." Julian's voice held unmistakable relief. "Thank you, Rebecca. You have no idea what this means to me." To us. After she hung up, Rebecca sat on her bed and wondered what she had just agreed to. But underneath, the nervousness was something else. Excitement. Hope. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. Entering a new world 2 weeks later, Rebecca stood outside the gates of the Hayes estate with a single suitcase containing her worldly possessions. The property was massive, hidden behind high walls and electronic security. When Julian had said house, she had pictured something big. This was beyond anything she could have imagined. The gates opened automatically and a car pulled up to collect her. Not Julian, but a driver named Thomas, who was polite and professional. As they drove up the long driveway, Rebecca stared at manicured gardens, a fountain, and finally the house itself. It looked like something from a magazine, all glass and stone and modern architecture. Her room turned out to be larger than her entire apartment. With its own bathroom and a view of the gardens, Rebecca set down her suitcase and tried to process the fact that this was now her life. She had gone from a cramped studio to a mansion in 2 weeks. A knock on the door made her turn. Julian stood in the doorway, and behind him, peeking around his legs, was Oliver. The boy's face lit up like Christmas morning. He ran to her, and Rebecca dropped to her knees just in time to catch him in a hug. "Hey there, Oliver. I missed you." "I missed you too," Daddy said. "You're going to stay with us now?" "Is that true?" Rebecca looked over Oliver's head at Julian, who was watching them with an expression she could not quite read. Something tender and pained at the same time.
"That's true."
"I'm going to be here to spend time with you. We're going to have lots of adventures together. Does that sound good?" Oliver nodded enthusiastically, his earlier shyness completely gone. He grabbed Rebecca's hand and started tugging her toward the door. "Come on, I want to show you my room and my toys and the garden and everything." Rebecca let herself be pulled along, laughing at Oliver's excitement. As they left the room, she glanced back at Julian. He mouthed 2 words. "Thank you, finding connection." The first few days were an adjustment. Rebecca had to learn the rhythms of the household. The schedule Oliver followed, the way things worked in a world so different from her own. But Oliver made it easy. The boy attached himself to her immediately, following her everywhere, chattering constantly about everything and nothing. They spent mornings in the garden, where Oliver showed her his favorite hiding spots in the tree he was learning to climb. They had lunch together at the big kitchen table, just the 2 of them. While Oliver told her stories about school and his friends, in the afternoons, they read books or played games or just sat together while Oliver drew pictures. And slowly, gradually, Oliver began to open up about harder things. It happened one evening when Rebecca was tucking him into bed. Oliver had been quiet during dinner, and she could tell something was bothering him. "Miss Becca," he said softly, Can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Anything. Were you scared? When you saved me from the truck? Rebecca considered lying, saying she had not been afraid, but she sensed Oliver needed the truth. Yes, I was scared. Very scared. But you did it anyway? Yes, because sometimes being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means being afraid but doing the right thing anyway. Oliver was quiet for a moment, his small fingers plucking at his blanket. My mommy was brave too. Daddy said so. He said she was brave when the accident happened, that she protected me. This was the first time Oliver had mentioned his mother to her. Your daddy is right. Your mommy loved you very much. I miss her. Oliver's voice cracked, and tears spilled down his cheeks. I miss her so much, and sometimes I forget what she looked like, and that makes me feel bad. Rebecca gathered him into her arms, holding him while he cried. It's okay to miss her. It's okay to be sad. And it's okay if you forget sometimes. That doesn't mean you love her any less. Really? Really? Love doesn't go away just because someone does. It stays right here. Rebecca placed her hand over Oliver's heart. Forever. Oliver cried for a long time, and Rebecca just held him. Rocking slightly and humming a soft tune her own mother used to sing, when he finally fell asleep, exhausted from emotion. Rebecca gently laid him back down and pulled the covers up to his chin. She turned to leave and found Julian standing in the doorway. He had been there the whole time, listening. Tears tracked down his face. Thank you, he whispered. He hasn't cried about his mother in over a year. His therapist said he was bottling it up, that he needed to let it out, but nothing I did could reach him. He's a special kid, Rebecca said, stepping into the hallway and gently closing Oliver's door. He just needed to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. You make him feel safe. You make both of us feel safe. The way Julian looked at her in that moment made Rebecca's heart race. There was something in his eyes that went beyond gratitude, something that spoke of connection and possibility. She suddenly became aware that they were standing very close in the dim hallway, alone except for the sleeping child on the other side of the door. Julian, she started, but was not sure how to finish. I know, he said softly. I feel it too. Whatever this is between us. But I don't want to complicate things. You're here for Oliver, and that has to come first. You're right. Rebecca took a small step back, creating distance, even though part of her wanted to move closer. Oliver comes first. But as she walked to her room that night, Rebecca knew that something had shifted. This was no longer just a job. This was becoming something far more complicated and far more dangerous to her heart. The shadows. Creep in the next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Rebecca and Oliver were inseparable during the day, and in the evenings, Julian would join them for dinner. They became a unit, almost like a family, though nobody said the word out loud. Rebecca watched Julian with his son and saw the way he was changing too. He smiled more often. He came home from work earlier. He played with Oliver in ways that felt natural rather than obligated. The grief was still there, the shadow of loss, but it no longer consumed him entirely. And between Rebecca and Julian, the tension grew. Stolen glances across the dinner table, hands brushing when they both reached for something. Conversations that stretched late into the night after Oliver was asleep, talking about everything and nothing. They were falling toward each other like gravity, both fighting it and surrendering to it at the same time. One night, 3 weeks into her stay, Rebecca could not sleep. She wandered down to the kitchen for water and found Julian already there, staring out the window at the dark garden. Can't sleep either? She asked softly. He turned, and in the low light, his face was all angles and shadows. Too much on my mind. Rebecca poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. Want to talk about it? I keep thinking about how different everything is now. A month ago, this house felt like a tomb. Oliver was slipping away from me. I was going through the motions of living, but not actually living. And then you showed up and changed everything. I didn't do anything special. I just spent time with him. You did everything. Julian moved closer. You brought light back into this house. You made Oliver laugh again. You made me remember what it feels like to be alive, Julian. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Her heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. I know it's crossing a line. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. But I can't keep pretending that you're just Oliver's caregiver, that you're just an employee. Because you're not. You're so much more than that. Rebecca set down her glass with trembling hands. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm falling for you, Rebecca Thompson. Maybe I have been since the moment I saw you on that sidewalk with my son in your arms. And I know it's complicated and probably wrong and definitely too soon, but I can't help it. The confession hung in the air between them. Rebecca's mind raced. This was everything she had been trying not to feel. Everything she had told herself was impossible. She was supposed to be here for Oliver, not to fall in love with his father. But her heart had other plans. It is too soon, she said, forcing the words out. Your wife has only been gone for 2 years. You're still grieving, and I'm here for Oliver. If we do this, if we cross this line, we could ruin everything. What happens if it doesn't work out? I'll have to leave, and Oliver will lose someone else he cares about. You're right. Julian's shoulders sagged. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. But Rebecca reached out and placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing under her palm. That doesn't mean I don't feel it too. Because I do, Julian. God help me, I do. His hand covered hers, holding it against his heart. For a moment, they just stood there, connected by touch and confession, and a feeling too big to name. So what do we do? Julian asked. We wait. We take it slow. We put Oliver first, always. And if this is real, if this is something that can last, then it will still be here when the time is right. Julian nodded, though Rebecca could see the struggle in his eyes. He wanted to kiss her. She could feel it in the tension of his body, see it in the way his gaze dropped to her lips. And she wanted it to, wanted it so badly it hurt, but they did not. Instead, Julian lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Thank you. For being patient with me? With us. Always, Rebecca whispered. They stood there a moment longer, then reluctantly pulled apart. Rebecca went back to her room with her heart full and aching at the same time, knowing that something fundamental had shifted between them. They had crossed a line tonight, even if they had not acted on it, and in the shadows outside the kitchen window, someone lowered a camera with a satisfied smile. This was exactly the kind of story that would sell. The billionaire and his son's caregiver, caught in an intimate moment. Perfect. The countdown to disaster had begun. Though nobody inside the house knew it yet, the storm approach as morning came too quickly after Rebecca's sleepless night. She dragged herself out of bed, her mind still replaying every word of her conversation with Julian in the kitchen. The confession hung between them now, impossible to take back and equally impossible to act on. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to focus on what mattered. Oliver. The boy was waiting for her at breakfast with his usual enthusiasm, chattering about a field trip his school was planning to the aquarium. Rebecca listened and responded, making mental notes about permission slips and what Oliver would need to bring. Across the table, Julian caught her eye and offered a small smile, hesitant and tender. They were careful all morning, maintaining proper distance, keeping their interactions focused on Oliver, but the awareness was there, humming between them like an electrical current. Every time their hands accidentally touched, every time their eyes met, Rebecca felt the pull. Around noon, while Oliver was upstairs changing for their planned trip to the park, Julian's phone rang. Rebecca watched his expression shift from relaxed to tense in seconds. He stepped away to take the call, his voice dropping to a low, sharp tone she had not heard before. When he returned 5 minutes later, his face was pale. What's wrong? Rebecca asked immediately. That was my head of security. Someone has been taking photographs. Of this house. Of Oliver, his jaw clenched. Of you. Fear shot through Rebecca's chest. What kind of photographs? Julian pulled out his phone and showed her an email. The images made her stomach drop. Oliver playing in the garden. Rebecca and Oliver at the ice cream shop last week. And worst of all, A picture from last night taken through the kitchen window. It showed Rebecca and Julian standing close, her hand on his chest. The intimacy of the moment captured perfectly. God, Rebecca whispered. There's a message, too. Julian's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. They want money to keep these photos out of the press. $500,000 by tomorrow, or they sell the story. Billionaire moves new woman into his house months after wife's death, using son's trauma as cover for affair. Oh, but we're not having an affair. Nothing happened. The photos don't show what didn't happen. They show what looks like something happening. Julian ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Rebecca had learned meant he was stressed beyond measure. And even if we could prove nothing happened, the story alone would be devastating. The media would camp outside our gates. Oliver would be hounded at school. Your reputation would be destroyed. Rebecca sank into a chair, her legs suddenly unsteady. Who would do this? Could be anyone. A business competitor trying to create scandal. A photographer looking for a payday. Someone with a grudge. Julian's phone rang again, and he glanced at the screen. It's my lawyer. I need to take this. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I pulled you into this world. He left the room, and Rebecca sat alone with her spiraling thoughts. This was exactly what she had feared. Julian's world came with dangers she had never imagined. Threats that had nothing to do with who they were as people, and everything to do with money and power and the price of being in the public eye. Oliver came, bounding down the stairs. Ready for the park? And Rebecca had to paste on a smile and pretend everything was fine. But as they played on the swings and the slides, she could not stop looking around. Wondering if someone was watching them right now, if more photos were being taken, if every moment of her life was now subject to invasion and scrutiny, the impossible choice that evening. After Oliver was in bed, Julian called Rebecca to his study. She had never been in this room before. It was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive desk that screamed power and success. Julian stood by the window, his back to her, his shoulders rigid with tension. My lawyer says we should pay, he said without turning around. It's the cleanest solution. We give them the money, they give us the photos and any copies. We sign a non-disclosure agreement, and this goes away. And you believe they'll actually honor that agreement? Rebecca could not keep the skepticism out of her voice. No. Julian finally turned to face her, and she was shocked by the exhaustion in his eyes. No, I don't. But it buys time. It keeps Oliver's name out of the tabloids, and that's what matters. Rebecca crossed her arms, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the room. Julian, I think I should leave. What? No. Listen to me. If I'm not here, there's no story. The photos become meaningless. You can say I was a temporary caregiver, that my contract ended, that it was all perfectly innocent, which it was. You're not leaving. Julian closed the distance between them, his intensity almost overwhelming. I won't let you sacrifice yourself because of my problems. They're my problems too now. And I can't let Oliver get hurt because of me. He's already lost so much. He can't lose his privacy and his peace, because I was selfish enough to stay when I should have gone. You're not being selfish. You're the best thing that's happened to this family. Julian's hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. Please, Rebecca. Don't give up on us before we even have a chance to figure out what this means. Rebecca closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite herself. I'm scared, Julian. I'm scared of hurting Oliver. I'm scared of what your world will do to me. I'm scared that I'm in way over my head and I'm going to drown. Then let me help you. Let me protect you. You can't protect me from everything. You said it yourself. You have enemies, people who will use any weakness against you. And apparently I'm a weakness now? The word landed like a blow. Julian flinched and dropped his hands. You're not a weakness. You're a strength. You make me better. You make Oliver better. Anyone who can't see that is blind. But they don't need to see it. They just need to twist it into something ugly and sell it. They stood in painful silence, the weight of an impossible situation crushing down on them both. Rebecca wanted to stay. She wanted to fight for this fragile thing growing between her and Julian, wanted to protect Oliver and keep being part of this broken family that was slowly healing. But she also knew that sometimes love meant letting go, even when it destroyed you. "Give me 48 hours, Julian said finally. 2 days to fix this. My security team is working on tracking down who's behind the photos. If we can identify them, we can handle this differently. Just don't leave yet, please." Rebecca wanted to argue, wanted to pack her things and run before she got in any deeper. But the look in Julian's eyes stopped her. He was not just asking her to stay for Oliver. He was asking her to stay for him too. 48 hours, she agreed. "But Julian, if they can't fix this, I'm gone. I won't let Oliver pay the price for whatever this is between us. Deal?" Truth in the darkness the next day dragged like torture. Rebecca went through the motions with Oliver, playing games and reading stories, but her heart was not in it. The boy noticed. "Are you sad, Miss Becca?" he asked at lunch, his small face worried. "Just tired, sweetheart. I didn't sleep well last night. Did you have bad dreams?" "I have bad dreams sometimes." About the truck and the accident and scary things. Gaffa set down her sandwich and gave Oliver her full attention. "Do you want to talk about your bad dreams?" Oliver considered this, his expression serious beyond his years. "Sometimes I dream that everyone I love goes away, that Daddy leaves and you leave, and I'm all alone." The confession broke Rebecca's heart. She pulled Oliver into a hug, holding him tight. "Oh, honey, your daddy's never going to leave you. He loves you more than anything in the whole world. But what about you?" Oliver pulled back to look at her with those enormous brown eyes. "Are you going to leave?" Rebecca wanted to promise she would not. She wanted to tell him she would be there forever, that nothing could make her go. But she had learned young that promises could be broken, and she would not lie to this child. "I hope I can stay for a long, long time," she said carefully. "But sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices. What I can promise is that no matter what happens, I care about you very much. That won't change." Oliver seemed to accept this, though Rebecca could see the worry lingering in his expression. They finished lunch in quiet, and Rebecca felt the weight of her decision pressing down harder than ever. That night, Julian knocked on her door long after Oliver was asleep. When Rebecca opened it, she found him holding a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "I thought we could both use a drink," he said, "and I have news." They went out to the terrace, away from the house and any potential cameras. The night was clear and cool, stars scattered across the dark sky. Julian poured the wine and handed her a glass. "We found them," he said, without preamble. "The photographer. It was not a competitor or an enemy. It was someone on my household staff. A new gardener I hired 3 months ago. He was actually a freelance photographer looking for a payday." Rebecca's hand tightened on her glass. "Someone who worked here? Someone we trusted around Oliver? He's been fired, and the photos are destroyed. All copies. My legal team made sure of it." Julian took a long drink of his wine, but he told us something interesting. He said he started taking photos because he saw how you and I looked at each other. He thought there was a story there, a romance, and he was right, Julian. "No, let me finish." He set down his glass and turned to face her fully. "This whole situation made me realize something. I've been trying to protect you, protect Oliver, protect myself from getting hurt again. But life doesn't work that way. There are no guarantees. Bad things happen, whether we're careful or not. My wife died in a random accident. Oliver almost got hit by a truck. And you walked into our lives and changed everything. Where are you going with this? I'm saying I'm done being scared. I'm done pretending that what I feel for you is just gratitude or friendship or anything other than what it actually is." Julian reached out and took her hand, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her palm. "I'm falling in love with you, Rebecca. Maybe I already have fallen. And I don't want to wait anymore to tell you that. I don't want to waste time being cautious when life is so short and uncertain." Rebecca's breath caught. "Julian, we barely know each other. It's only been a month. I knew my wife for 3 years before we got married, and I loved her deeply. But that doesn't mean this is not real. Sometimes you just know. And I know that you're brave and kind and exactly what Oliver and I need. I know that when I see you smile, my whole day gets better. I know that the thought of you leaving makes me feel like I'm drowning." Tears pricked Rebecca's eyes. I'm scared. So am I, but I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. The declaration hung in the air between them, and Rebecca felt something inside her break open. All the walls she had built, all the reasons she had told herself this could not work, crumbled in the face of Julian's raw honesty. I love you too, she whispered. I didn't want to. I tried not to, but I do. Julian pulled her into his arms, and Rebecca went willingly, pressing her face against his chest and feeling his heart racing under her cheek. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, letting the truth of their feelings settle between them. When Julian finally tilted her chin up, when his lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and fierce at the same time, Rebecca felt like she was coming home. This was right. Complicated and scary and uncertain, but right. They kissed until they were breathless, until the stars wheeled overhead and the world fell away, and there was nothing but the two of them and the promise of something new beginning, building a future the next morning. Rebecca woke to find Oliver sitting on her bed, watching her with an enormous grin. Daddy said you're staying forever now, he announced. Is that true? Rebecca sat up, pushing her hair out of her face. Did he now? And when did he say that? Just now at breakfast. He said you and him are going to be together like a family. Is that true? Come here, you. Rebecca pulled Oliver into a hug, her heart full to bursting. Yes, it's true. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I wanted you to stay forever and ever. You make Daddy happy. And you make me happy too. You make me happy too, sweetheart. They went downstairs together to find Julian in the kitchen making pancakes. He looked up when they entered, and the smile he gave Rebecca was radiant. Good morning, he said, and the warmth in his voice made her blush. Good morning. They had breakfast together, the three of them, and it felt natural and right. Oliver chattered about school and the park and 100 other things while Rebecca and Julian exchanged glances that spoke of everything that had changed between them. Later, after Oliver went to play in the garden, Julian pulled Rebecca aside. I want to do this right, he said seriously. No rushing, no pressure. We'll take our time and let Oliver adjust. But I want you to know that I'm in this completely for the long haul. So am I, Rebecca said. It's terrifying and wonderful, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm in. Good, because I have a question for you. Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Rebecca's eyes widened. Julian, if that's what I think it is, it's way too soon. Laughed and opened the box to reveal not a ring but a key. It's a key to the house. Your house too now, if you want it to be. I know you've been staying in the guest room, but I want you to feel like this is your home. That you belong here, not as an employee, but as part of our family. Rebecca took the key with trembling fingers. I don't know what to say. You'll stay. Say you'll give us a chance to build something real. Yes. The word came out strong and sure. Yes to all of it.